Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast with John McMahon and John Kaplan. This podcast is brought to you by Force Management. Force's solutions help companies meet the revenue goals that drive funding, higher valuations, and stockholder value. Today, a segment from our episode with Eric Erstin, longtime sales leader, currently the CRO of RegScale. Here they talk about what top performers do.
Yeah, so top performers are always focused. And that sounds so obvious, but lots of sales teams aren't focused on what they sell, focused on what their weekly metrics are supposed to be, their monthly metrics, quarterly metrics, and really focused just around what does success look like. So many teams get out there and we use that term unconsciously competent. So many teams are really unconsciously competent. And when you find the one team, I remember acquiring a company back at RSA, and you know many of these guys because both of you gents have mentored many of these sellers. But boy, they were laser focused. They had their metrics, they had their process, they knew what good looked like, and they knew where to spend their time and where not to spend their time. And when you come from an organization that perhaps isn't that focused, and then suddenly you look at one that is, it's a stark contrast.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about what really hit me in all the things you said. There's a number of them, but the one that really hit me the hardest was knowing where to spend your time and where not to spend your time. I know that goes to focus, but talk a little bit about some of the things that the productive teams spend their time on versus not spending their time on.
Well, this is where I think that the old measure twice, cut once approach to sales management is really important, because in order to know how to qualify out, we've got to know what success is and what makes our deployments and our sales processes work really, really well. And there's some obvious ones that work in any sales cycle. Right? We got to get to budget, and we've got to understand timeframe and pain and all of that stuff. But there are nuances, and the nuances really, really matter. So I think that, as we look at qualifying out, we've got to understand a lot more about the ideal company profile and then the ideal contact themselves. So the human and the persona profile. And that's something that in my earlier years, I think I just took for granted, back to that unconscious competence thing. And I didn't really spend nearly enough time thinking about the role of the human. I thought, if you get to an exec, I've been in cyber a long time. So if you get to the CISO, you're good. Well, maybe. And that's a pretty safe bet. If you're going to bet on one persona, that's a good one. But there's lots of
that's what you're selling security.
But there are a lot of different scopes of CISO. Sometimes the CISO doesn't own what you're selling. We sell a platform today that CISO sometimes owns, but generally doesn't own exclusively. So they may not be able to ubiquitously just make a decision. They're often just a key stakeholder in a platform, and they may not own the whole thing. So that level of understanding of the role of the persona and how they fit into the company, because different industries, it works differently as well. I don't think I appreciated that fully for many years.
I think a lot of people, to your point, they'll actually figure out their ideal customer profile and who that persona is. But to your point, they never really dig deep on the profile of the persona themselves.
Yeah.
That's really important. I mean, we're dealing with humans, and you have to really understand what drives that person. We know how they're measured typically, but we never go any deeper than that.
Yeah. What are some of the things you guys would expect to see in that profile of the persona?
Well, these days, I think it's more about trying to understand who the person is than expecting things. Like these days, it's so easy to Google, especially a C-level person who's probably talking on panels, probably has maybe done some blogs, and trying to and checking their LinkedIn and industry organizations that they join. You can start to put a little bit of a profile together of who that person is and what excites them and what doesn't excite them. Can start to make some sort of judgments, at least.
I think a ping for that later is just some of the tooling that's available to us that wasn't available even 10 years ago. But I agree with that a lot. And Cap, when you asked that question, I'm assuming you're going into you're thinking of some of some of the med pick and some of the criteria around how are we helping to understand what role this person really does play.
Well, I like both things that you guys have hit on, because I want you to go there. And then I want you to follow up on John's point of just, there is a work persona and a role persona. And there are certain value drivers and things like that, Eric, that I'd like you to comment on. But then also with the technology that we have today and the access to information, we can even go deeper into the human persona of the individual, which is what you and Johnny were both talking about. Bring those two worlds together for us, Eric. You started it with, hey, early on in my career, I didn't really think about the persona, the profile. Talk about how that's evolved for you.
Yeah, well, I think I have to take another half step back to give that one real context. And, I learned a lot of this stuff from you gents around sales process and steps in the process and the relationship between the messaging, the sales process, the qualification methodology, the forecasting methodology, and how you bring all those components together. It's a lot more technical than just meets the eye. But I don't think I appreciated sort of the nooks and crannies as much in my earlier days as you do until you build it yourself. And so the reason I share that is, as a seller, if I could get meetings, I'd just keep pulling the thread and I'd get around and I'd network and I could figure out how to just get a deal done. I don't know that I could necessarily teach it too well, but I could do it pretty well. And then all of a sudden you get given a budget and a whole bunch of headcount and you say, yeah, I know, by the way, by June, you need to sell X. And you're like, oh, well, okay. So how do I get everybody else doing what I thought I was pretty good at myself? And that's where the appreciation of the importance of understanding all these nuances come to be.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. This show is brought to you by Force Management, where we help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Check out forcemanagement.com for more information.